Okay, I'm calling the September 27th, 2020 Planning Board meeting to order at, looks like 6:45. If we'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, next thing we have is minutes from the last meeting. If you guys have gone over that, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the meeting of September 13th.
And I second it.
All in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same. Motion carries unanimously. All right. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. All right, so on new business, before we get started, anybody here that wants to speak tonight, we need you to raise your hand so you can be sworn in. I mean, on anything that's coming up tonight, you need to raise your hand and be sworn in if the attorney would swear them in.
Happy to do so, Mr. Chair. If you would stand up and raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? All witnesses have been sworn.
Is there anybody online? All right, thank you very much. Okay, tonight we'll allow people to come up and speak one time for 3 minutes, and we're going to have to hold it to that. Last meeting, I think we were here till late, so we'll do that. And also, let's try not to shout from the when someone's up here speaking. We don't need people shouting out. If you shout out and it becomes too unruly, we'll give you a warning. If it happens again, we'll have you removed. We don't want to do that, so let's just keep it civil. And anything that's got to be addressed, don't address it to whoever's up there or someone else. It has to be addressed toward me, so that way, and I can redirect the answering or whatever that is. So let's just try to keep it civil tonight. I know it's a really hot topic. I know I've spent a lot of time this past month going over a lot of things on this, so much so it felt like a job. So I guess with that, we'll start with the first resolution that's here, the mural ordinance.
Chair, I'll go ahead and read this by title only. We can have a motion that'll put it on the floor and then have board comment followed by citizen comment. This is resolution number PBLPA-LDC 22-06, a resolution of the Plan Board of the City of High Springs, Florida, serving also as the local planning agency of the City of High Springs, Florida, recommending to the City Commission of the City of High Springs, Florida, approval of an amendment to the text of the City of High Springs Land Development Code as amended pursuant to an application LDC 22-06 by the City Commission, providing for adding Part 7.12.00 entitled Murals, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion at the appropriate time is to pass resolution number PBLPA-LDC 22-06. You can pass it upon its reading by title only. You can make amendments to the resolution, or you can deny it. Those are your choices.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If you'd like, I'll just make a real quick overview of what the mural ordinance does. What this first section provides is intent, which is to create a permitting process for murals. So if a building owner wants to have a mural painted on his side of his building, then this establishes the process to do that. The next section is as to definitions and what a mural is, the mural permit fee, that sort of thing, which can be set by the planning department based upon whatever time they think or as a reasonable fee is for the mural permit. Mural permit application, these are the things that need to be contained in the application for the mural permit, such as name of the artist, name of the owner, street address, location, and it goes on and on through A through J. Obviously, we need to be provided what we think the mural is going to be. There should be a concept for what the mural is going to be painted on the side of the building. It must have zoning compliance, can only be in non-residential zoning districts. In the historic districts, there's a provision which rules what happens with respect to murals in our historic district. There is a setback requirement, can't be within 50 feet of a residential structure measured from the closest exterior edge of the view of the surface to the closest parallel residential wall. Location on the mural can only be on the side of a building, can't be on the primary facade of a building unless there's some exception, some reason that is presented to you. So there is an exception for that, but otherwise it needs to be on the side of the building, back of the building, or that sort of thing. Mural materials, it specifies you have to have anti-graffiti coating so that the mural is going to be durable and will be on there for a period and look presentable. Mural size, if it's 100% of a blank wall that can be painted if it's up to 15 feet high or less. 50% of a blank wall can be painted if the mural is up to 30 foot high or less. The maximum height for a mural shall be limited to 30 feet from the ground level. The mural text, commercial text is not allowed. We've talked about some of this in our past experience on this board as well. If it's a licensed, copyrighted, and trademarked character used on murals must have permission of the holder of that licensed copyright or trademark, and no approval should be given for a mural unless if there are outstanding code enforcement problems with that building, then you can't put a mural on that building. Says the process as to how we will govern the issuance of the mural permits. And then it goes into in 7.12.05 murals in a historic district, and the materials shall be reviewed to ensure that it does not compromise, damage the historic fabric of the building. Murals shall not be painted on historically original or unpainted brick or stone surfaces in order to preserve the historic fabric of that brick or stone that it represents. Installation may not permanently damage the historic building as well. And it is not necessary for the mural applicant to go to the plan board, since this board sits as your historic preservation board as well. Planning department keeps up with all of the mural permits where they have been permitted in town and to what extent. That's under 7.12.06. Prohibited murals are a mural that covers more than one single facade of a building unless it's provided for. The exception that we talked about it, or it violates federal, state, or local law, then it would be no longer permitted. And then if there is a problem with the mural, the latter part of the ordinance provides we can go to code enforcement. We can utilize measures to fix the mural if it falls into disrepair and the building owner is not allowing the mural to be kept up properly. So that's the overview of the mural ordinance, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Anybody in the public would like to speak on this, approach the podium and give your name so that we can write it down for the record. Okay. There we go.
5337 Northwest 200 Terrace. I really just have a question about the murals.
Okay.
Are they supposed to have anything to do with High Springs? There's a big mural on the building right across the street, and it's got a sea turtle and a grouper on it. And I don't understand what that has to do with High Springs. It's more of a question than...
Yeah, I understand. I guess when I was on the board when that mural came through, and it was basically they used the explanation that we're a gateway to the springs,
but there aren't any sea turtles in springs.
I understand that, but if you take the
Or
spring,
groupers.
right? If you take the spring all the way out, eventually you get there somewhere, but that's a long ways off. No, I do agree with you 100%. I think it was based on a picture originally taken by who's the author of that picture, or the original picture? That's
Which-
the daughter
which mural
of
is this?
Next to the beer
Skiles?
place.
Les Skiles, was that it?
The one
Yeah.
on the one on the High Springs Brewery is a alligator.
No, we're talking about the one right here.
Oh, I'm not sure about that one.
I
no.
think, yeah, it was Wes Skiles, correct? And that's what I think it was taken from an old picture, and that's why the turtle and it was a saltwater picture, I believe, if I'm
Yes.
correct. So no, I do understand that, but
Because I get a big chuckle out of that every time I go by. Seriously?
I agree with you there 100%, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Like I said, it came before the planning board. It wasn't passed unanimously, but it did get through.
Okay,
So-
I just mostly just wondered.
Right. Yes, I agree. I think when it comes to these murals, can you go a little more on that?
So from what I understand, they're supposed to be content neutral, so we don't have a lot of say over what's in them, more how they're done, where they're done, how large, how small they are, that type of thing, because of First Right Amendment.
Okay, I just wondered. You know, I mean, grouper?
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, it's public discussions closed. What do you guys got to say? Anything?
Yes, Mr. Chair, first of all, I think staff did a real good job of putting this mural package together. And I'm really glad to see that we're not going to be painting back over brick and stone surfaces in the historical part of town. But I did have one question. So, for instance, the mural that's just right outside the building here, let's just say that they wanted to paint it again. Based on all this that I've read, would we allow them to paint another mural on that brick? I mean, how are we
I think it would be
protecting?
unlikely in the historic district, and what I've been seeing in other communities is that they allow for murals in their historic district, but they have not a fence, but a board that goes up outside the brick, and then they paint on that. And it seems to be the way that it's done in that instance, so it doesn't damage the brick.
If you look at the old school, they have a quilt mural, and it's on a board.
So kind of like put a fake facade up and then paint on that, so that it can be taken down, but without affecting the brick and everything. But I think what you're talking about is if they wanted to change that or paint it over completely,
Right. In other words, if they wanted to paint a totally different mural
Oh.
on that brick wall.
they would have to come before us again.
Correct.
Because it says on, what was it?
But if they came before us again, if I'm understanding what I'm reading, that we would not allow them to paint on brick or stone.
That is
Probably- that's
correct.
probably
In the
correct.
historic
Okay.
district, that's correct. And the other thing is, it can't be over 30 feet high. That's the other restriction in the ordinance. I don't know if that reaches 30 feet. It's probably getting close, yeah.
That's all for me.
So even if it's already painted and they do away with it, they can't put it back, correct? We'll have to put it back on a board or a facade.
I think they could maintain it. I
But that
think
would
that
be it.
part of it, but if they decide they want to redo the whole thing, then it's got to, any modifications have to come back to you.
Perfect, okay. And we are leaving business names off of them,
Yes.
okay.
Also, if it becomes too deteriorated, it would then fall under that they can come in and try to repair it, but if it's that deteriorated, we could use that as an excuse that they would have to change it.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else like to speak from the public? Okay, public is closed again. I guess then at this point, I need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we pass Resolution LDC 22-06 mural ordinance.
I second, and I want to add that they've really answered every question I had, and staff did a great job in putting this together.
Christie? Yes.
Brad Riddle,
Yes.
John Walsh,
Yes.
Tim Bolliger,
Yes.
Hector DePones.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, we're on to number 2, the Saddle Ridge Estates preliminary plat.
That's the item I'll be sharing with you. So Kevin, can you pull up the PowerPoint? Unless, Chris, you want to say something since it's your project. All right. So this here's Saddle Ridge Estates preliminary plat. It's located in that area. It's in the southern part of the city, well and septic, zoned R1, rural residential. So the density that's allowable here is 1 dwelling unit per 5 gross acres. So they've got 30 lots on 154-ish acres. So their preliminary plat meets all city requirements, so staff is recommending approval. And there's that's a excerpt of the packet before you that shows the 30 lots and the, what it looks like. And we've got the applicant here if you have any technical questions for him, so.
Anybody here from the public that would like to speak on this? Approach the podium and give your name, please.
It's Annalise Brits from Springstead. I only have one question on the impact. That Northwest 142nd Avenue will have the main egress and ingress, and the additional trips that they calculated would not have an adverse impact to Northwest 142nd Avenue. I live on that street. It is about 12 feet wide from side to side. Currently, if you have oncoming traffic, someone needs to get off the road to make space for a big truck or a log truck or something like that that's coming in. There's already a couple of potholes that's big enough to plant trees in them. And the side of the road is completely falling apart because you have to go off the road to make space for someone else. And there's only one side of the road that you can veer off to make space for oncoming traffic. I do not have a problem with them adding the houses to that area. I'm just wondering, how are we going to keep the road in a good condition, because the current traffic that's in that road is annihilating it. And there's no space for you to actually make it bigger because there's no sidewalks there. So I'm just wondering what is the solution that you guys are going to come up with to keep this road in a maintainable condition where we can actually drive on it with a car.
Do you want me to
You
answer?
can handle that.
So currently, with this plat, there are not enough trips being generated for us to require the developer to make off-site improvements. We have an inventory that our public works director has recently updated of all the roadways in the city, and there's a prioritization list, and that road is within the inventory. I'm not sure where it falls, but I do not think it's one of the ones slated for this next year to get improvements. But it is on the list, and I can check where it is. But as far as this development is concerned, there are not enough trips generated for us to require the developer to make improvements.
Would the impact fees of that help toward improving that road as it comes in there? Or when it's
Yes,
not there?
the impact fees have not been passed yet.
Right.
So, it depends on when the final plat is submitted as to whether it will follow under the roadway impact fees, because we are in a 90-day waiting period to adopt them. So if they get the final plat in prior to the 90 days, they will not be assessed them, but after the 90 days, then they will, and it will go into a fund for offsite improvements. I do not think 30 homes will make enough money to do a whole lot. I mean, maybe fix some of the potholes and stuff, but not to reconstruct the whole roadway or anything.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak on this?
Where? Okay, so that's 142nd, I see.
Also, I would like to mention it is a county road, so the city wouldn't be responsible for
So
that
the
anyway.
city's not responsible
Yeah.
for it.
It's a county road.
Yeah, that's County Road 24, or, yeah. Oh, it is County. That's, what-
It says County Road 24.
you know, this, you know, through this whole process, this has been getting annoying with all the state roads and county roads, overlapping city roads.
We have a lot of that going on in the city right now.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're hamstrung by what the county can do, or by all
we,
this stuff.
Yeah, but we can still work with them and you know, we can enter agreements with them to make some light repairs if needed. But again, I'd rather our public works director assess that against the other priorities in the city.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I'm Debbie McMullen. I live on 142nd. The county says it's your road. The county says it's the city's road. We had a tree fall across there several months ago, and I went out to talk to the policemen that were guiding traffic. And I said, do you have any idea how long it'll be before the whole road is fixed? You know, the tree's gone. He said, well, we don't know because this side of the road is the city and the south side of the road is the county. So whose road is it? The county says it's yours. You
Right.
say it's the county's.
Right, and that is typically when those instances happen, we get together and we either make an agreement for one or the other to repair and do some cost sharing, or you'll have one or the other give the other side to the other entity. That has not taken place with this roadway yet, but and it can be explored further. But for purposes of this development, there are not enough trips generated for us to require the developer to make off-site roadway improvements. And we can go look at that further and get back with you. If you want to give your name to Christy and phone number, then we can call you back and I can have our public works director give you a call.
Okay, so the entrance to all these homes will not be off of 142nd. The entrance will be off of 41 or 45?
No, it's on 142nd.
It will be off of 142nd.
Correct.
And so what are you going to do with all those mailboxes and stuff that are on that side? We're not allowed to have our mailboxes on the north side of the road where our houses are. They're on the opposite side of the road.
Right. For purposes of this development, then mailboxes will be internal. For all the other issues, those need to be talked about outside the discussion of this development because those issues aren't on the agenda, so staff hasn't had time to vet them yet. So the best thing to do really is to give us your name and number, and then I can get staff to get back with you on those other issues.
Okay, so you're passing a development before you're deciding.
No, those are,
Fix
what
the
you're
road.
bringing up is off-site issues that do not have to do with the current development.
But they will.
Well, the issue here is the trips generated from the development, and this development does not generate enough trips to warrant off-site development improvements by the developer.
Okay.
So the reason why the mailboxes would be internal is that's actually a city development and not tied in with the county, whereas the county.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay, so they have to have their mailboxes there because that's a county requirement, but being that's a city development, we can make them internal.
Right.
Anybody else? All right, public discussion is closed. What do you guys, anything up here?
Yeah, just a question. This is all septic and, well,
Right.
Right.
Because they're 2-acre lots and larger.
Let's see, I've got two questions. First of all, I like the design and I like the large lots, especially 2 acres and the 5-acre lots. My question is, I saw on the drawings here, there's gonna be a fire hydrant. It says a gallon water storage tank and 1-inch PVC water supply to storage tank. Can you explain to me what that is? Is that for firefighting purposes? And how big is maybe that tank?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Potts with JB Pro. Yes, that'll be for fire suppression assistance. It'll be a buried tank for fire suppression for the community.
So will that require some type of electric pump, or is the fire trucks just hook up to it and basically suck it out of the tank?
It will not require any electrical. The fire trucks have the pumps in the
Okay.
truck to pull out of it.
Okay.
They would use a drafting system to draft it out of it.
They'll draft it out of the tank, but what's gonna refill the tank? Just like, it's like a dry well? or
Correct.
fire
It'll be an
well?
on-site well that'll fill it
Okay.
up.
Another question, I'm just curious, there's a line that kind of snakes around that property. I thought I read it somewhere. Is that a horseback riding trail?
That is correct. Yeah, the
Okay.
intention is that it'll be a horse community for horseback riding for the residents of the development.
Okay.
So there might be horse stables and stuff on the individual properties and stuff like that? They can keep them there?
There potential.
Potential?
I mean, that'll be part of the building side of it with the building code.
Okay.
But the intention is to have, residents will have their own horses.
And my final question to you is under general notes, it was on drawing C3.0. It says the proposed stormwater system will receive runoff from the the proposed development. The system is proposed with full retention basins. Basins 1 and 2 have the option to discharge if needed. Explain that part of it, discharge if needed. Where would that water go?
So based on the topography of the site, the natural topography discharges off-site. So by state and local regulations, as long as you meet the pre-post discharge volume and rates, the stormwater basins are allowed to mimic the existing conditions. So that's what that statement means.
Yeah, but where's that water go?
It naturally just flows off-site. It can go
But it's
east,
not
west,
gonna
north.
erode that road anymore.
If it flows that way, then there is the ability to continue that volume by state regulations. It's a state statute that you're allowed to mimic the existing conditions.
And what would be the process for discharging that water? Natural discharge or pumps?
No, it would be just natural control structures in the basins.
Okay, so like an overflow on a retention area?
Correct. And those would all be permitted with the city as well as Swanee.
That was the answer I was looking for. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Paved roads,
Yes.
and then they're gonna be dry retention basins unless they're taking stormwater.
Even with the stormwater, the intention is that they will be designed for dry.
Designed for dry, okay.
Correct.
Standard curbing or swales or?
The intention right now is to have roadside swales, to give the rural feel, but
Yeah.
no curbing at the moment.
Curb and gutter is not typical on large lots. It's not really needed on lots this side. It's more needed when there's density.
And if you have horses, it's better for them.
Correct.
We're gonna be talking swales or ditches?
The definition of both is the same. The swales will be designed to carry the capacity of the runoff off from the roads to the stormwater basins.
Okay. I just wanna make sure there's enough right of way from the road back to their property to put a nice gradual swale and not a deep, sharp ditch.
Yes, there'll be, so from a construction standpoint, the minimum width of the bottom of the ditch is preferably 3 feet, because that's the size of a bucket when they dig it. And then gradual, you'll have 4-to-1 or 6-to-1 side slopes
Yeah,
down
I'll
back
just
in.
make sure they can be mowed, and not have to be hand cut
Right.
and overgrown.
Yes, they will not be 3-to-1 or 2-to-1. They'll be able to be mowed.
Okay.
Will the easements be maintained by the city or by the resident?
Well, which easements in particular?
Oh, well, like the
swales.
swales and the ditches and stuff.
No, we will not be maintaining them.
Yeah, they'll be.
Because I know right
private
now the city, we go down a lot of ditches and stuff, and these guys are busy as all get out just
Right,
from, because people
right.
won't cut their ditches because the city does it.
Yeah, we are not continuing that.
Okay.
Yeah, in these type of large subdivisions, the homeowners view their maintenance responsibility to the edge of pavement. So they'll mow them and take care of them.
Okay, so the edge of the road, you'll probably have a concrete swale just to direct the water, and then probably a ditch if it's overflowed, or Would
No,
it be
the
part of it?
roadway will be pavement, and then it'll have a stabilized shoulder,
Right,
and then it's just grass from there.
gotcha. Anything else? Anything from the public? All right, then I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to pass SIP 22-000008.
I second it.
Christie?
Donald Alderman,
Yes.
Brad Riddle,
Yes.
John Walsh,
Yes.
Tim Bolliger,
Yes.
Hector Tapanes.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, the next item is Bridlewood Development.
Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and read this by resolution, title only.
Thank you.
This is a resolution number PB LPA Z 2203, a resolution of the Plan Board of the City of High Springs, Florida, serving also as the local planning agency of the City of High Springs, Florida, recommending to the City Commission of the City of High Springs, Florida, approval of an amendment of 10 or more contiguous acres of land to the official zoning map of the City of High Springs Land Development Code pursuant to an application Z 22-03 by the property owner of said acreage, providing for rezoning from PD Plan Development and R1 Residential to PD Plan Development /12 in accordance with a concept plan dated May 2022, submitted as part of an application dated April 2nd, 2021, of certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of High Springs, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion, the appropriate time will be to pass the resolution PB/LPA Z 22-03 as read by title only. And Mr. Chair, we have procedure. This is a quasi-judicial matter. The first thing to do is to find out if we have any ex parte communication amongst the members of the board.
Okay. I've been talking to staff on and off, just getting the particulars on this item, and that's about it for me.
I have talked to staff as well, requested some documentation.
Not at all.
None for me.
I have talked to staff just to try to get more information on it.
That gives, that's an end to the ex parte communication portion of it. And then at this stage, city staff will overview the application and present the case.
Thank you.
Sir.
Chris Potts, the agent for the developer, he will be providing a presentation, and then I'll be providing a short staff review following.
Mr. Chair, so one item I would just like, and Mr. Attorney, you can correct me if I'm say something incorrect, but this is, since it is quasi-judicial, the board needs to make their decision on competent and substantial information. So competent means a person that is qualified to give expert testimony, and then substantial is experts that are deemed competent in giving the expert testimony. So not just opinions or basically just based on facts that is presented by an expert. An expert is somebody who has specialized in either training or a degree. So I'd like the board just to keep that in mind. And going through the presentation, we also have an expert who, fortunately, she could not be here, but she is certified as a fellow AICPE for the state of Florida, which is one of the highest rankings you can get for an AICPE. Basically, they are considered of the board level. On top of it, she is also a specialized attorney in the state of Florida. So I'd like the board just to keep that in mind, is that since it is quasi-judicial, the board keeps an open mind and only makes the decision on facts and not personal opinions or opinions of others. Besides that, we're here for the PD amendment for Bridalwood. We were here last time. I know there's 2 board members who weren't here the last time of the presentation. So for the other 3 board members, I apologize. We'll be going through some of the previous information, but we feel it's relevant for the other 2 board members who missed the last meeting. So we're going to go through the project background, the existing zoning, where we worked through with staff on the current master plan, and then leave it open to any questions or discussions. So this is the previous Tillman Acres property. It's a little shy of 690 acres. There is an existing PD ordinance on it, as well as a existing plat that is on it as well. And we'll go through all that in detail. So its current zoning, which was approved back in 2005, is planned development. Its future land use is residential suburban. And so with that, the proposed amendment falls under the land use as well as the zoning. It's surrounded by the existing Tillman Acres as well as agricultural and other higher density residential developments. So this is the previous master plan that was approved back in 2005. 800 residential units were entitled, excluding the existing 56 units of the original Tillman Acres, which is phase 1 that is currently built. In it, there were no defined amenities or open space. There was a perimeter 25-foot buffer that was proposed in it, but no minimum lot size and no building setbacks either. So the top right is just a chart with the phasing of the different units that were proposed in each phase, and then the residential units in the little snippet below is from the 2005 ordinance that allows the different types of units, which are single-family detached as well as semi-detached units and patio homes. Patio homes are smaller lots, usually in the 40-foot or smaller range for the width. So to talk about the existing plat, there's an existing plat called Tiamiami Gardens, number 3, 5, and 6. Of that plat, there's roughly 1440 lots in between all 3 plats, but only 1,200 of those are within the Bridalwood development. Those lot sizes are 25 by 100, and those plats were recorded back in 1925. Now, recently in discussing with city staff, there was a previous ordinance that went through to remove the roadway obligations to the city. So in other words, the city requested that the roadways be converted from public to private so that they would not have to maintain those roads if the plat was ever constructed for maintenance and ownership responsibility. So the plat is still in viable good nature. It's just the city requested that they are not liable or responsible for the roadways if the plat was ever constructed. And so this is a letter from the previous expert that I was mentioned. Her name is Susan. She is a licensed planner in the state of Florida as well as an attorney. And I know this letter was provided to the board. In this letter, she basically identifies existing land rights that owners have in the state of Florida, as well as the Constitution, as well as some case law. And she identified, which is highlighted in the red box, what the existing entitlement for the development is, which is the 1,200 lots plus the remaining acreage, which would be roughly 587 units. So that together equals 1,787 lots. So that's what the existing entitlements for the property are. at this very moment. And, you know, I spoke with her earlier today, and she did review the ordinance, and she agrees that the ordinance from the city only states relevance to public roadways, not the actual individual lots. So the plat is still in good standing. It's just the city is no longer obligated to own and maintain the right-of-ways within the plats from 1925. So this is very important, because what we're proposing is actually a reduction in the density units that have been entitled throughout the years. So as we go through, this is just kind of a path of how we got here today, with our discussions with city staff, neighbors, as well as other agencies like the school board. So we first started out with 2,500 lots of varying lot sizes, the smallest being 40, the largest being 70. Again, with age-restricted units, multifamily, and senior living facilities. In going through the review process with the city, we decided to make some changes. Those being, we eliminated the 40-foot wide lots. We still have the 50s. We added 80s, and then defined the maximum number of units for either the multifamily or age-restricted units. So then we ended up in the current master plan, which is part of the PDA ordinance that we're going through right now, requesting for board approval, is a maximum of 2,000 units. That includes multifamily, age-restricted, and the single family. Now, if the development was 100% built out of just single family, we'd be at 1,437 units, which is over 350 units in reduction from what's entitled. So that's very rare that developers are willing to give up entitlements, but we feel that this development is what the city is looking for in our discussions with staff. The city helped us identify the goal for the development and for the city to provide parks that are all within a half a mile of walking distance. We kept the 25-foot perimeter buffer all the way around. We eliminated connections to Tillman Acres. We worked with the city on the points of connection for their visioning for roadway networks. And then we still have a max cap on multifamily units, age-restricted units. And then our lot sizes, we actually increased to have just the minimum lot size of 70, 80s, and then 100s. So infrastructure improvements. So I know that seems to be a big topic. So with this development, all the roadway improvements that are either state regulated, county regulated, or city regulated will be the responsibility of the developer to improve it to sustain the development. And then on top of it, we'll have the impact fees that will be contributing to the city, as well as any offsite water and wastewater extensions. Those will be part of the developer's cost to serve the property, and then those utilities will be granted over to the city for ownership and maintenance. Based on the current city's water use permit, this project will not require the city to request additional consumption. The existing city permit has capacity, and so there will be no additional request from Suwannee to increase what we call the CUP permit. In addition, we're working with the Public Works Department to figure out ways to help use effluent from the wastewater treatment plant for irrigation and help disperse the reuse water from the wastewater treatment plant. And there'll be no wells or septic on site. It'll all be municipal water and sewer. So as I mentioned earlier, there's significant amount of parks and open space proposed. In the previous PD, there was no such requirement at all. No amenities, no open space. The only requirement was the 25-foot buffer. So now we're stating that a minimum of 10%. However, we're proposing, as you can see, 22% of the development to be parks, open space, amenities for the community. And they'll all be within a half-mile walking distance of every single resident within the development. And then once we get to the part of developing the programs for the parks, we plan on coordinating with the city's parks director to help the city pick up on any deficiencies that the city may have on the type of amenities or sports fields or equipments that are needed. So these are just general examples, a splash pad, passive parks, tennis, bocce ball. The idea is to have more multi-purpose fields so that they can be used for various sports instead of a defined sport like a soccer or baseball. So that way the fields can grow with the community as different sports become popular throughout the years. So this is just an example of a park that we put together, just kind of a quick little sketch. This has a pool, a playground. The field to the bottom right shows a soccer field, but that's just for proportional sizes. So it would actually be a multi-purpose field that could be for soccer or any other pickup games that the community likes. And this is just an example of what we worked out with the city, just as the first thought. But when we get to actual design and construction, we'll coordinate even further at that time to determine what the needs are. And lastly, for the type of houses and architectural standards, we've worked with the city to establish architectural standards in the PD, and as well use state and local builders. By local, they don't necessarily have to be local as in Alachua County, but local as in local to Florida, so not national builders like D.R. Horton or Miranda, but maybe some folks out of Jacksonville or Orlando, or the local, not the big national builders. And these are just some of the local builders within Alachua County that have shown interest. And we've actually worked, I think we have 20 or 25 builders who are interested in coming to this development. So that's all we have. And again, I'd just like to remind the board that your decision is based off competent and substantial information and testimony. And we're here to answer any questions.
And
Thank you very much. Go
I have
ahead.
a presentation as well, so I don't know if you want to ask him questions or have me go and then.
Do you guys want to ask him any questions first and have her go, or do you?
Her go.
No, she might answer some of them. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So my presentation is similar as the one that I gave last time, but just for people who are new in the audience, as well as the 2 additional plan board members. So as Chris stated, the location is north of 155th Avenue, south of 174th, east of 41, and west of 222nd Street. It's basically very close to our wastewater treatment plant. And it's on 687 acres. As far as the future land use, no future land use amendment is required. They do meet our future land use. The low density requires 1 to 4 dwelling units per gross acre. So how that is determined is you take away the streets, the parks, the buffer, all that sort of stuff, and then what's left over is how you determine how many dwelling units are left per acre. So can you go back to the previous one, please? So they meet the future land use. As far as the zoning, the proposed plan development, as Chris stated, is for 7,000, 8,000, and 10,000 square foot lots. The current plan development has 800 units specified. There's, as Chris stated, there is no minimum lot size. There's no setback requirements. I'd also like to stipulate that there's no minimum house size. So that would trip the minimum house size citywide, and that's 1,000 square feet. Would be the minimum house size, the same as for the rest of the city. To the north is R2, R3, and C2 zoning in Ag County. So the majority of that zoning is R2, with a portion of it being R3 and a very, very tiny amount, the C2. So R2, the majority of lots are 7,500 square feet. The portion of R3 is 4,500 square feet. To the east, west, and south is R1, which that is 22,000 square feet, which is a half an acre. As far as staff is concerned, there is compatibility because it would continue what's happening at the north, the 7,000, 8,000, and 10,000 square foot lots, continues that down. So the current PD abuts the 7,500 square foot lots and 4,500 square foot lots. So by continuing it down, it would just be the same thing. The planned development, just to get more specific, 982 are 7,000 square feet, 293 are 8,000 square feet, and 157 are 10,000 square feet. So the majority still is 7,000 square feet. The minimum home size in the PD is an additional 500 square feet, 1,500. There are pretty substantial design standards in there as far as building materials. What's required, what's not required, what's not allowed. There's also architectural design features. Basically, the point of them is not to have flat front-facing homes. So we have homes with some character and integrity. And there's a large list of architectural design features that we are requiring, and the developer can pick up to 4 of those, which is, many communities that have architectural design standards will only have maybe 2, and we're requiring twice as much. House repetition, no homes can repeat themselves beyond every 4 homes, so that's on both sides of the streets. And further, homes across on the side and catty corner and behind cannot be the same. There's a minimum facade elevations. 10 facade elevations are required for every 100 homes, so that you do not have the same homes all throughout the subdivision. And they can't just be a little different. You have to be able to tell they're different. So if you just put a shutter on one home and another one doesn't, that doesn't count. Landscape requirements, 1 large tree and 10 shrubs for every home, only 70% lot coverage, and 40% of the species has to be native. The medium density residential provision, this refers to the 200 multifamily units that are permitted in the PD and 250 senior living, assistant living units. So these have design standards as well. The purpose of these is to prevent large monolithic masses. So that's just buildings that are just don't have any character or anything at all to them. So as with the residential, there are requirements for building materials, what is allowed and what is not allowed. And further, the building materials, you have to have more than one. Since they're larger buildings, you have to have differentiation in building materials, and you have the design features just as with the residential. In addition, the accessory buildings have to be the same material as the main buildings. Likewise, the screening for the dumpsters, that has to be the same material as well. Distinct building models. So for every 4 buildings, there has to be 2 different models. It requires site plan approval by the city commission for the multifamily and assistant living, and they have substantial landscape requirements as well. Subdivision standards, 60 acres. This is kind of piggybacking off of Chris's, but getting more detailed. 60 acres has been set aside for parks, recreation, open space. Each park requires site plan approval. The parks are, when Chris says within half a mile, that's a 5-minute walk from every home. The primary community park must be under construction by the 300th building permit. So there are triggers on when the parks have to be activated, so you don't get all these homes built with no parks. There is land that has been set aside for a public school, land on the development that has been set aside for a police fire station, and there's 3 acres that have been set aside for non-residential purposes. As Chris stated, the subdivision shall be served by central water and sewer. We really don't want, as with the current Tillman, it's allows 800 homes, but they would likely be well and septic, and septic is not good for the aquifer. Suwannee River Water Management District is always providing grants and encouraging the city to do things to get off the septic. So central water and sewer is a good thing. All roadways will be constructed with curb and gutter. Sidewalks are required on both sides of the residential roads and interior collector roads. So the sidewalks will be 5 foot each on each side, which is, allows for people to walk side by side. In addition, there is a 8-foot width trail that will connect and provide interconnectivity to the school site, parks, open space, amenities, and commercial areas. So basically, it'll be safe for kids to get on their bikes and ride to school and not have to be in the roadways. And that is a substantial amenity within the subdivision. The 25-foot buffer, as with the Tillman PD, is kept. There will be a landscaping plan required for the entire subdivision, and that requires 40% native vegetation as well. In the retention and detention areas, one thing that is kind of unique about this development that is not in other parts of the community is that a large tree needs to be planted every 50 linear feet of the perimeter is required. This will also help bring down the temperature in the development, and that's always a good thing in Florida. The subdivision entrance must have divided entryways with landscaping and trees, and they have to incorporate additional design, whether it be a water feature, a focal point, something that makes it unique and inviting coming into the subdivision. So the comparison between the Tillman PD and the Bridlewood PD, obviously, the density in the Tillman PD is less than the Bridlewood PD, but we do have the issue of the existing plat. So the minimum home size is 1,000 square feet. The Bridlewood is 1,500. The setbacks, there are no setbacks required. There's no minimum lot size. That leaves a lot of exposure for the city and what eventually will end up there. The Bridlewood PD, there are setback requirements. There is a minimum home size. There are lot sizes, design standards, house repetition, minimum facade elevations, landscape requirements, native species, parks, interconnectivity, trigger points for construction. There's just a variety of additional things that have been put in to try to make it a really nice community.
Thank you very much. Questions for either or?
Yeah, I'd like you to address the entrance and exits, because based on the new map we have, it seems different to me, at least.
Oh, I think
It's
that
been
was the
changed?
original Tillman. I think that was the, can I see what that is? Oh, Chris, can you, is that the, oh, it's this one, Chris.
Is that the correct one?
On the new map, we're looking at 3 possible entrance exits, one onto 45. The-
This is the same plan. It's just colorized. This is the other one. Yeah, this mimics the colorized plan. It's the same exact plan. It's just the one that's displayed is colorized. So there's connection off of State Road 45, a connection down on the southeast, and then one up at the school, which mimics which mimics this plan.
Well, one I'm looking at, what I see is one on 45 and one that is called, can barely read it, 239 Terrace.
Yes, and that is shown, that is shown up on the north side,
Okay.
right next to the park.
There's one
No.
further to the left.
You see your green section down there?
Yes,
next to that
right,
green
right
section,
next to the
to the
park.
left of it.
Right next
There's
to,
an entrance
right there where the
coming
hand
through.
is?
Correct.
Right there.
Yes, and that matches this plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. It does?
Yes.
All right, and then what about at the school?
Yes, there's one to the north at 174th, and then one out to the bottom right of the school, which matches this plan as well.
So there's 4.
4.
There's 1, 2,
So
3,
there's one exiting on 222.
and there's 5, if you count the school entrance,
Bottom right,
in the bottom right.
The one down there is an exit too?
this
Okay.
one right here.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And these roadways match up to the city's vision for roadway connectivity.
There's also, in our comp plan, there's a new kind of major thoroughfare map. So it keeps in with the spirit of that major thoroughfare map.
And this, even though it may help traffic in both directions to and from, there's no connection to Tillman Acres here?
That is correct.
So there'll be no traffic going through Tillman Acres?
Correct. We're not proposing connection to Tillman Acres.
Okay.
If
That was
the,
one of the biggest items we've heard from the Tillman Acres residents.
if in the future Tillman Acres wants access to the other side, is it possible to make the connection?
I mean, that would be up to the city because those are public right-of-ways.
I mean, is it lined up enough that it's not a problem?
Correct, it is.
It should be.
Okay.
Yes.
But we are dumping on the 222nd. You do have, because originally I thought one of your presentations, you said that wasn't gonna be opened, that was future.
Well, it is a future connection to the bottom right, correct.
It's based on the phases, I believe,
Yes.
as they get to that point. And I think, is that the last phase down there, or is it the one up to the top there?
The progression is from the west to the east.
Right.
So it'll move, once it hits to the center, then it just depends on
Which
time,
direction?
correct.
You typically need to have connectivity north, south, east, west to get vehicles around, and so you don't have stacking within the subdivision going into or out of the subdivision. It's just good planning.
I know you all donated some land for the school. Is the school board, Alachua County School Board on board and everything's good with that, or?
Yeah, so they have provided us information that they are interested in the land, but they're going through their internal review to determine if the location is appropriate.
I would like people to keep in mind this is a concept plan. So at plating, should the school district say, I don't want that property, or they need something else, then at that time we will work at plating to get them what they need.
Yes, the reason why this corner was selected was based off the previous PD, which had gone through their vetting process, and they wanted that section. So we basically kept it, and then are going back through their planning process to determine if that is still.
I guess also it would be easier access down
Yes.
to that corner from 441 and 41 for bus routes and stuff like that.
That is correct.
Your very first or second screen you had up was the map. Was the blue in that map the original Tamiami plot?
Yes, in
Yes.
yes. So,
That one, yeah.
yes, the kind of hatched area that's all the blue. Those are
Correct.
those
It's
are
right in the
1200.
center, it goes right there.
Correct.
So that's the Tamiami plat from 1925.
That is correct.
Of the 1400 and something.
Correct.
Chris, I'm gonna have several questions, but to follow up with John, Northwest 239th Terrace. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, is that coming through a small subdivision with 23 homes in there that has a cul-de-sac?
It has actually a dead-end road
Correct.
that the right-of-way is extended to the property line. So it is planned out for the roadway extension to continue. So it's a platted public right-of-way to the property line with the intention to extend the roadway connectivity. Now,
Well-
the roadway is paved. It's not a paper street. And so we felt that that was an appropriate connection along with the city staff.
It's a pretty narrow road, isn't it, in that neighborhood? I mean, I took pictures of it if I have the right one, and I, for whatever it's worth, I've been all around this area since our first meeting, 4 times. I'm just gonna say it for the record, I don't think a road ought to be coming through there.
I mean,
I mean, that's just, I understand everything that you said up front, but it's awful narrow in there. I mean, I was dodging trash cans set out there by the road. I can't imagine with a bunch of traffic coming through there. But that's just my perception, and
And I would like to add that, again, this is a concept plan. You know, as the phases come with plating, you know, then we will do the traffic impact analysis. And then if it's determined that one of these roads doesn't make sense, we'll determine what the alternatives are. Likewise, the developer will pay, as well as this, the roadway impact fees will pay for some off-site roadway improvements. They're going to have to be made, and there will be some roadway widening that will have to take place. And existing plats, you know, have the right of way, even if it's not, the road isn't made that way right now. So, just to let you know, there's.
I understand that. And a lot of questions I have, I don't need to address tonight because they will come up.
Based on the existing
But-
plat for that subdivision, the right-of-way is 53.53 feet. So a 50-foot right-of-way is typical. So there is plenty of right-of-way within there. So then the roadway may be viewed as narrow, and you know, people's personal property like trash cans typically move towards the asphalt. But the existing platted right-of-way is over 50 feet wide.
So, Ashley, that answered one of my questions, because one of mine was turning on to 222nd, because that's a chip seal road. But we will address that later at further
Right.
down.
Right.
I got another question, the parks. Who will maintain the parks? Will it be a homeowner association, or is it gonna be the city?
So it will either be the HOA or we've been discussing doing a district that would be internal, that people within the subdivision would pay for, like an HOA. So it would either be that, it will not be the city. We will not be maintaining the parks in this subdivision.
Like I said, Chris, I'll have more questions down the road, but I am curious. After our meeting, we had, I don't know what it was, 18 pages of citizens' comments, and this really doesn't have, well, I guess it does have something to do with the project. I know that, well, let me just read this. Mr. Potts stated he was happy to pass out his card, answer questions or concerns, set up one-on-one meetings. He stated they were not there to be the bull in the china shop and just say this is how it is, and that they have been working with city staff. So my question to you is real simple. Did you have anybody approach you in the last month?
Yes, I had a couple residents emailed me, we corresponded. I had one resident come in and we sat down and went over the project in person. So we have been reaching out to those that have contacted us with questions or concerns.
Okay, and I personally thank you for doing that for the citizens. And I have a question for you, Mr. Walker. If I have questions, can I directly talk to Chris in the future?
What I would suggest is give me a heads up of what your questions are. Really, your determination is this evening. I do
Yes.
agree with what Chris said. You know, your decision is based upon competent, substantial evidence that comes to you. The opinion testimony is limited to people that have designations such as a professional engineer, AICP, the American Institute of Certified Planners, that kind of thing. So So, questions that you have this evening, if you have questions, then try to elicit those from Ashley, who's a certified planner, or Chris. Christy has training in that regard as well. So those are the people that you can take opinion testimony from. Now, after tonight, much of your work is done as far as the existing plan. It will probably be coming back to you in some iterations down the road. So we want to be careful about that part of it. In other words, if you're taking information outside this hearing, then you have to say, I received this information from Chris based upon my conversation, and it affects my opinion in this way. That's really what you have to do.
Okay, I understand that. So but I could go through city staff to get a question answered?
Sure,
Like I did
sure. Oh, yeah,
for some
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, I do have a question in the scheduling of the actual building. I saw a list of the contractors. I'm very familiar with all of them. How many houses do you intend to put up on a yearly basis, let's say?
I mean, honestly, that's a little challenging to present at the moment with everything being in flux. You know, obviously November is going to impact one way or another the economy as well as construction.
Of course.
I mean, typically the average house rate is between 100 and 150 a year. I don't foresee it exceeding that at the current moment, based on, you know, economics and interest rates and that sort of thing. Now, if you backtrack to, say, 18 months ago, it would probably be higher in the 2 to 250 range. But again, it's kind of market driven depending on outside forces.
And you're gonna be selling as you go, of course.
Yes, that would be the intention.
I guess where I'm getting at is, I wouldn't wanna see an impact on this city all at once.
Yes, I mean, there's no physical way to build every single house
No, I
day
gotcha.
one. You know, there's a lot of different moving parts that we have to work through with city as far as capacity of the sewer plant, extending utilities. You know, then there's actual construction time frame, which is being extended out based off market demand for materials. And then you have the actual building of the houses. If you take a small subdivision, I would say 50 to 60 lots, to get to the point where the houses are actually constructed, you're probably looking between 18 and 24 months before the houses are to the point where you can start pulling building permits.
And
That would also, if they outgrow our infrastructure, they can be paused at that point too.
right, so staff will not recommend a plat be approved if we are not going to have adequate water, sewer, roadway capacity, and if we do not have plans for how we're even going to handle our park system. One of the good things about this development was that they were putting multi-use fields in and different things that can take a load off of our park system, so we don't have to use wild spaces, public places money. So not saying none of it'll be used, because as the community grows, our needs will increase, but this development did take some of that amount off of us as well.
Talk to me about police, fire.
So with that, we are working with the city to set aside land to provide public services. You know, it'll be up to the city from that standpoint to determine what those services would be, whether they're a police station, a fire station, or a combination of, or, you know, that aspect. That would be up to the city to determine from their demand what the land should be used for. But then on top of it, the development will be contributing impact fees as well help support the construction of new facilities.
Yeah, and to talk about the impact fees a little more, I mean, as we discussed when we did the ordinance, but just to remind y'all, is that, you know, a significant amount of studies and calculations go into determining what that impact fee is going to be with the intent to, at a minimum, maintain current service levels. So those impact fees have been designed to pay for the cost of development and to have the amount of money needed to provide for those services without having to use money we're already spending within the community on those services. So between the impact piece and the tax base that will come from this development, it will more than pay for itself for public safety.
And we're not too early, they will be paying impact fees.
Well, so in the development agreement, so say for some reason, which isn't even possible, they were to bam, get everything through within the 90 days, which again isn't possible. The development agreement says that they will be paying at the current amount of impact fees at the time of building permit. So say, even if they prepay, so, you know, say they do a project where they prepay the development and then we credit them impact fees, we will get the cost, say we increase them 5 years down the road, we will get that increase amount. So they will not be locked in at today's rate, which, you know, that's a pretty significant thing because I have worked for communities that have done that, locked them in, and it's very bad. So they've agreed to that in the development agreement.
Chris, I do want to say something positive is, in y'all's design, you've come a long way from the Tamiami Trail plat to the conceptual development plan and that was dated January 6, 2005. And I think y'all put a lot of effort in it. I think these parks are great. I think you went above and beyond in your design. I'd just like that to go on record.
Go ahead, get yours, I got a list.
I really have a legal question as far as what the city can or cannot do. Does the city have any leverage in deciding the size as far as the number of houses for this project? Based on, and the reason I ask that question is because in looking back at the prior 1920s, when they basically said that it was approved, Alachua County approved it for 1,200 homes. 1440. Was it 1,400?
Yeah, 1440, yeah.
Close. And in 1925, it was mentioned something about 800, but it's not clear in my mind. I guess my question is, does the city decide? What if the city wanted half the homes that are there? Can they do it?
Well, I think the question is, you have a 1925 plat.
Right.
That's been approved, it's been recorded, and it sits for 100 years. And it appears never to have been vacated. So a landowner, the successive landowners don't lose rights with respect to those platted home sites or that plat. It's never been vacated by the landowner, it's never been vacated by the municipal government either. So the landowner has certain rights with respect to that 1925 plat. We're in a little bit of maybe a gray area when we get there, because when you come forward to recent decisions in Florida law, you don't necessarily have the right to just start building homes on that 1925 plat. Even though you have vested rights and it's still there, you don't have the absolute right to just start building homes on that site, because you have to apply that old plat to the current land development regulations. Now, the attorney that is representing the developer wrote the letter that's been referenced this evening, and she made an application of of that 1,440 homes and said, because of the Phase 1 of Tillman Acres and because the way the development has already transpired, she believes you could only get, you wouldn't be able to do the 1,440. I think that paragraph that Chris highlighted in his presentation said 1,200 homes would be what she would anticipate would be developable. Now, the ordinance, again, it gets a little further gray because you have an ordinance that occurred in 2001 in the city where we vacated the road right-of-way and the alleys and all of that. And that, I think, is somewhat unusual, and I don't know exactly the purpose and the intent of what went on in 2001, but in that ordinance it says, whereas the closing of said avenues, roads, streets, and alleys is requested to facilitate replatting of the lands contained within said plat of Tamiami Gardens, misspelling here, but I believe it's to allow development of the subject land in a manner consistent with the goals, policies, and objectives of the High Springs Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Regulations. So that's in the whereas clause of the 2001 ordinance. Then we have a 2005 PD that is approved by the city and the landowner at that time. And what effect does that have on the existing plat? Was the intent that, obviously the new PD did not replat that land, so what development rights does the landowner have as to that 1925 plat? It's a very interesting question, and I've asked Susan Trevathan, the attorney that's represented the developer, tell me your methodology. How do you get to 1,200 homes? What, you have to have set-asides for drainage, stormwater drainage. You have to have set-asides for the streets and roads. Apparently, this ordinance takes those streets and roads out of the public nature of those roads and they become private. There is some language in here that says we're anticipating further uses of the property that is different than the Tamiami Trail subdivision. So it becomes a very convoluted matter, and I don't know that I understand exactly how Susan, their planner attorney, gets to 1,200 homes. But it's a question that is a fair game and something that we can certainly look at. My suggestion to you is to look at the development, look at what is before you. It meets the density and intensity requirements as per our planning staff is telling you that that is where we're at. So you have to take her opinion, which is a professional opinion. You're taking Christie's opinion, professional opinion. You're taking Chris's opinion, which is, again, a professional opinion. And so setting aside for just a moment what development rights you specifically have as a result of the old 1925 plant, the 2001 ordinance, and the 2005 PD, setting aside all of that, looking at what the underlying zoning is on this property, looking at the comprehensive plan, what your planning staff is telling you is that it meets all of those requisites, and there are a number of other negotiated items that go along with this subdivision. So setting aside, I disagree with the argument that we have these rights to simply plug these numbers in, because I don't know how you get there quite yet. You know, maybe we'll ascertain that, but that gets you in such a gray area that it really, I think it's almost a rabbit trail. And what your focal point is, in my opinion, is to listen to the opinion testimony of your planning staff, listening to the presentation, and is there any contra information, at least from a professional standpoint, that is an opposite of that? So that's your Polestar.
Well, I'll tell you what brought this up, reading this letter. And, you know, she stated basically what happened in 1925, 205, et cetera. So the thing, what came to my mind is, you know, how do you arrive at the number of homes that they want to build? Can the city say it's too many? We want half that, we want a third of that, we want, is there any right? That's my question.
I don't think you can just say, we want a third of those homes. I don't think you have the ability to do that when you have the comp plan and the zoning provisions that are in place.
Okay, that
But
was my question.
I don't, I'm not at a point where we have vested rights, essentially, to build out the homes as per Susan's letter, at this point, at least.
Add to that, Scott. So anyway, if the developer meets our LDC, our comprehensive plan, we really legally can't deny them. If they meet everything.
No, as long as it means state, federal.
If they meet everything,
Water.
I mean, legally, they can proceed.
Well, and I think the other provision is it compatible with the surrounding areas, and I think there's been a testimony on that, not only at this hearing, but also at the previous hearing. And I think Ashley went through some of that with you at the last hearing, and she determined that there was the intensity and the density in surrounding properties that was at least compatible with this development as well.
And based on how we've handled compatibility with other commercial and residential developments, we looked at it the exact same way. So if something touching and the whole northern side touches, so it may not surround it, and you may have other intensities surrounding it, but that whole northern side, you know, you do have a small part of PD and a part of county, but you have, it's obvious the grid, the way it was going.
To
I do
further,
have a question for you.
if I may, to further answer your question, is the intensity and number of units is defined by the future land use. So as Ashley had in her presentation, she had different ranges of like 1 to 4 and 1 to 6. So that defines the number of units. So basically you can build as less as 1 per acre or up to 4 or 6 depending on the underlying land use. And that is based on the comp plan, the number of units that by right you're allowed to have on that property.
I think I heard Chris say that the water sewage plant didn't need to be upgraded or anything for this?
So not the wastewater plant, the water, we're already permitted through Swanee River Water Management District, that the number of gallons or the capacity that's needed for this development, it's already been permitted. Like it's already, our whole system already has that much capacity. So now say if other developments come, you know,
And that's where I was getting at.
they could end up saying, you know, say we have another 500 home subdivision, it takes off while there sits there for some reason or another. Well, at time of platting, you know, and or building permit, there's not capacity. We're stopping them at either place. I mean, we don't let things be built without capacity.
Yeah, capacity is not reserved until a plat is recorded.
Unlike the county or state, that's things get out of control. Any more? Okay, well, I'm sorry I asked a ton of questions, but I gotta understand it all. The multifamily you're talking about, is that just like 2 units, or can it be 4 units, stacked units, or what are we looking at?
The intention is either attached units or a traditional multifamily building. We do not plan to go higher than 3 stories.
Okay, but it won't be like quadplexes, or could it be that? Okay, just be like duplexes plus, or
Duplexes
townhouses.
or a traditional multifamily
Okay.
complex.
And your estimation of if on the current economy and stuff like that, it could take up to 15 to 20 years to complete this out on average?
On average, correct.
Okay. Now, of course, there's no wells and no septics, but will they be allowed to be permitting for wells for irrigation?
No, the intention is to use the city's effluent water as irrigation.
But is there a possibility they could?
Well, right now, that's not what's been discussed.
Correct. So the idea is for individual residents, wells to irrigate the yard is not allowed.
Okay, so
it's
that will be
either has
written
to
in there?
come from-
It's too dense.
Yeah, it either has
Okay.
to come from the
Yeah.
potable system or.
Well, I
if we
mean,
can
in my
extend-
neighborhood, there's like 7 houses with wells.
Yeah, so that's not where this development is going, and that's not what staff would recommend. There would be a second line for irrigation
Okay.
coming from the wastewater treatment plant. And part of that also is so that people aren't irrigating with city water, and so we're reserving capacity through reuse.
And plus, it allows you to get rid of the,
Yes, and it allows us to get rid of
Yeah.
the gray,
The poopy water.
Yes.
okay. The builders, when this starts, will all the builders be pre-listed, or can some new builders come in at later times? Or-
Yes, there's no, I guess, closed door.
Okay.
So the intention is to have it open. The other intention is to, have a model center of all the builders. And so any resident has the ability to see and pick which builder they'd like to use.
And there won't be a limit on the amount of home designs? Like you can have if you're wanting to come in and buy there, could it be as many as 20, 30 homes to choose from?
It's completely up to the builder. A lot of them are custom home builders. I mean, they all have some sort of floor plan that you start with, but they allow changes.
But it'll be subject to the planning board?
It'll be subject to the architectural standards,
Right,
correct?
okay. And talking about the repetition of homes and stuff, who polices that? There'll be something like a map, and they say, well, I want this house, and they go, well, this house is 3 houses away from you here, you can't do that one?
Correct. So
there-
it'll be up to the city will be enforcing it, but then the builders themselves are keeping track of the type of facades that they're allowed to have.
We'll keep track of it too. Like typically you have a master map and you have little, like the old
been in
school
those
way,
developments,
highlighting the
Can't-
home. but this
These are the
is-
houses you can choose for that lot, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is back on the 1925 plat that said you can build 1,440 homes, and then I think it was mentioned as low as 1,200. So if we basically shot everything down, going by either or, there could immediately be permitting for 1,200 homes, give or take. Currently, if I'm correct on that, with the possible future adding in the other part of the development even more homes. Am I correct on that?
And this is where there's the gray area.
Yeah, so with the existing plat, there's still other items that, from a development standpoint, we'd have to meet. The city, in their LDRs, they have a section for lots that are technically non-conforming. And so we would have to go through the LDR process to address those to make sure that the lots are, in essence, buildable. Yes, the right-of-ways have been given back from the city to the private owner, but with the plat, the existing right-of-ways meet the 50-foot requirement. So the right-of-ways are there. How the 1,200 units were calculated is, if you could go back, one of the plats extends further into Tillman Acres. So you can see there's kind of actually go back to the aerial if you don't mind, yes. So you can see how Tillman Acres kind of cuts in basically a chunk. So that's where the missing 240 lots is. When Tillman Acres was platted, Tillman Acres replatted that section of the old plat.
And I would like to add, Chris mentioned the second section of nonconformance, but the Tillman PD, again, they don't have a minimum lot size. They have a minimum number of lots per phase, but not a minimum lot size. They also do not have a minimum home size, and they don't have setbacks. So it'd be normally the nonconformance is with the setbacks on, like, for instance, Old Town. There's many lots that have been platted from 1920s, And people come to build on them, and some of them don't have streets in front of them. They're dirt roads, right? People come to build on them, and if there's a nonconformance, then they would go through the variance process and come to y'all. But, you know, typically staff would recommend approval because since those lots were already platted and people have a right to build on their lots and they can't do anything about that. But in this case, I would say, you know, most of the things you're going to want to do since you don't have the setbacks in the Tillman PD, they would be in conformance. I can't figure out what wouldn't be unless they want to build a home that was too big for the lot.
And they would gain access through Tillman, approved already, instead of external. So they would, actually, the entrance of Tillman would be the access to this property, and then changes the land development code for all the surrounding area as well, because that's in there?
As far as, what do you?
Well, I mean,
guess,
let's,
can you
let's
read-
say you wanted to develop the rest of the land, and
Yeah.
this, and let's say we say, no way, it's not happening. You say, fine, I'm gonna build this.
Right.
That now changes the demographics of the land. You could technically continue that on.
So in the letter that Susan referenced is based on the existing future land use.
Right.
You know, at a minimum, for the remaining portion of the property, we could build 1 unit per acre, which is the 500, and there's roughly 100 acres in the existing plat.
So you'd be back up to almost 2,000 homes.
Correct.
But you would have 1,200 of them,
In a little small area, but then we also.
quality, not quantity.
Right, but then also,
Quantity, not quality.
we're out, that we're on, then we have to supply the infrastructure for that, the roads and all that, correct?
Well, no, the developer would still have to build it, just like any other plat. But
But,
those.
but as
those
far as the
road-
improvements to the roads coming in and all that, we're on the hook for that, correct? Or is a developer required for that?
It, again, that would be in a negotiation that we would work with the city on a traffic study and determine what those improvements would have to be.
Typically, what you do is those are typically prior to final plat, you work all of that out. So this would be a very unusual case where we would be negotiating and hoping they work with us on things, and we would be trying to pull things out of code saying you have to, and they would try to work with us hopefully, and all the fun things that go along with it. But typically, again, that stuff is done before platting, not after, so.
Right. And if you were to go with that, everything would be through the one entrance to Tillman.
Yes, that
There's
is the-
nothing that backs up to it. Okay.
That is the legal access that is
To that.
platted as a
Yep.
public right of way.
Okay, okay, no more questions. Thank you, Chris.
Yes.
Anything else, guys? Okay, I guess we'll open for public discussion. I would like to thank everybody for being courteous and not interrupting, and we'll afford you the same thing. So if you'll come up and give your name, and then you can speak. You'll have 3 minutes, and I'm sorry, but we're going to cut you off at 3 minutes.
Mr. Chair, Jim Conish. I'm an expert in land use regulation. I know Mr. Walker. I'm a graduate of the UF Law School. I'm no longer a member of the Florida Bar. I published law books for 40 years. Mr. Walker told you he cannot figure out how their attorney gets to this staggering number that has all these people back here afraid. I think you need to clarify that, number one. Number two, competent substantial evidence can come from lay people when they testify about facts. We have facts and law. We have a legal morass that has Mr. Walker confused along with me. He lacks clarity over fundamental legal issues. These people out here have facts. Let me give you a couple facts. I bought a subdivision in an unincorporated area platted in 1988. Alachua County came along with an aggregation rule and forced me to combine my 1 acre lots into 5 acre lots. So you can change your comp plan. You could slap a moratorium on this whole thing and you can change the rules of the game. You're not, hostage to a developer. In terms of how fast this can build out, I'm from South Florida. I have property in downtown Gainesville right near Mr. Walker's office. Take a look around the University of Florida. Take a look at South Florida. Take a look at downtown Gainesville. The floating dock at Santa Fe at Post Springs Park, after 3 years of normal rain, is 8 feet out of the water. The river is down by a third. Post Springs is sick. With all that's going on in Gainesville and then this, I would bring the county in, because they have the staff and the expertise to take a second look at this. With all due respect to your staff, this lady is extremely competent. But this is bigger than your staff. And this will fundamentally change High Springs. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. On that, real quick, while you mention that, sir?
He's gone.
All right. Well, the question I was going to ask is, you can make a statement even if you're a layperson, but don't they have to produce the facts at the point of that claim? They can't just say it's there and then.
The best way I can explain it is that you don't leave your common sense at the door. You still have the ability to apply common sense, but opinion testimony is usually taken from somebody that has an expertise in that particular area, training, experience, that sort of thing.
Okay. And also, he may mention that we can like nip this in the bud by throwing some ordinance or change an ordinance. But if he starts this in progress, we're kind of on the hook. We can't change the ordinance in the middle of the project, correctly? If he starts putting in for permits.
I'm always very reticent to do a moratorium ordinance.
Yeah.
That's for the most
I mean, that
severe
leads to a lot of
cases.
legal problems at that point. Okay. All right, that was my questions. Next.
I'm Julie Tapia Ruano, 21428 Northwest 154th Place, adjacent to 222nd Street. At the last City Commission meeting, I was invited to come to the party in the Commission chamber, so I brought my popcorn per comments in hour 2 or so of the last Commission meeting. But that was just a side note. In the planning meeting, I believe it was Mr. Chairman, that had said he had never been down 222nd Street. I would like to ask if he has since researched further down our scenic highway tree lane. That's a question for, if all the commissioners have since followed up on our comments from the last meeting. Also, to our 2 additional board members who were not here last time, have you had a chance to watch and review the minutes of the meetings? I think you've indicated you've done your homework and things. What were your current thoughts on those statements made by the public concerning school access, the scenic nature of 222 and 154th? The neighborhoods there have not been named very often, but it's called Cedar Lane Plantation and Oak Lane Plantation. And we are 2, 5, and 10, also 20-acre parcels. We have equine interest, pedestrian interest. We have jogging and cycling that come through there, all part of the nature of the city that we represent. So if you could answer that, if you've done your research down that road. Most of the citizens on that road remember the Tillman proposed, I believe it was 2005. I moved in 2008 in the middle of what was called the Pig House City, whatever, that project.
Fiasco.
They did not want that much development cutting through at that time with a right-of-way to my neighbor's property, which would exit out to 202nd. So that easement is existing now with the current property owner, but we still don't want to widen our tree lane highway to 12, 14, 20 feet. Chip seal has got its negatives, but we like that it keeps traffic down. We don't want to be a thoroughfare. We have children in the area. We have kids on dirt bikes. We have kids on John Deere's. It's a very recreational neighborhood. And to put 2,200 potential home sites or families, maybe with 1 or 2 cars each, it's just too much traffic for that area. It's too much too soon. I believe Mr. Walsh said that last time. It was too much too fast. So, also, as far as to us not coming out as the public in with due diligence enough to be aware of the project. You addressed us as you people did not bother to come out. We were in the middle of a pandemic. We were trying to stay alive, stay healthy, keep our kids at virtual school, and keep working from home. Maybe we were distracted from the public forum, but we should not have been called out that you people never showed up.
Okay, I think I'm the one that made that claim, and it was because there were several meetings before then that was outside of COVID that no one showed up, and it was just an empty house. But that's why I made that claim. And as well as it was referred to us that the people of High Springs don't want this, but those same people from other developments that were going in at the time, nobody here showed up for those either. So, I mean, it's not we as High Springs, it's the people that are surrounding the property that are showing up. And that's my intent of what that was, is until it became your backyard, then it became a problem. You mentioned those two developments. Are they gated communities?
Cedar Lane Plantation is, but the gate is broken at the moment.
But they're gated. I mean, it's not access to the public. They can just go in and ride their bikes through and stuff like that, correct?
Cedar Lane is gated, Oak Lane is not.
Okay. All right. And she had a question to us on going down 222nd. Did anybody bother to go down and?
To answer your question, yes, ma'am. I have drove it 3 times. Some of you that live in the area may have seen my truck parked at the intersection of 222nd Street and Northwest 174th Avenue, as well as Northwest 222nd Street and 154th Place, which I drove that as well. And I can tell you from 174th to 154th, it takes 3 minutes exactly doing the speed limit to get there, and I shot a video of it the entire length to take back home to view. So I hope that answers your question. I could make some comments about traffic, but I think that's inappropriate this time. It doesn't fall in line with the meeting tonight.
You're welcome. To answer the question, yes, just because I wasn't here, Kevin does a great job of getting these meetings on YouTube. I have watched that meeting. I've watched every commission meeting on YouTube if I'm not here. I've been out there. I've driven 222nd many a times, and I've driven all the surrounding roads. I even went into Tillman and around there.
I've driven the road. I've traveled from 142nd to 174th on the road. It is a beautiful road.
I've lived here in High Springs for going on 26 years. I go up and down that road a lot. I service a lot of my customers through on that road. So I guess the answer is yes.
Did that answer your questions? All right, next.
John Hackland again, 14244 Northwest 232nd Street, High Springs. I just wanted to determine, we see these representations, are they fact-based? In other words, how can you depend on the current map and representation that you see? That's one.
Yeah, keep asking questions.
That's one question.
Go ahead.
Another question is, it was determined, I think you asked if there was an entrance through Tillman Acres and were answered. On one of the slides, it says there was not going to be an entrance through Tillman Acres or Springstead. Is that the plan?
By the current drawing, I think that's the plan, yes.
And so then my question, I'll refer to the first question again. Is the representation dependable?
Well, that's a general drawing. It's like an artist rendition, and that's why.
So if it says.
Right, but as far as the boundaries go, that would be correct. But when it gets right down to the final platting, which would be what Ashley was talking about earlier, that they still have to come back, and there's some stuff that's going to go through, like the school property could move. If the school district deems it not good, they would have to move it.
I'm just talking about for the people that live in Springstead. Is there a plan?
I think she said the road could move. Was
Mr.
that
Chair?
correct?
You want me to answer?
Yeah.
I can answer this one since she's out at the moment, but currently we are not proposing to. I don't know why that went out, but there we go. Not proposed to connect to Springstead at this time. Things can obviously change because you go to the platting, which is the engineering stage, but I mean, that's not something we want to connect.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Drew Travis, 15337 Northwest 214th Terrace. Concerning the plat, the list of things they had up there was neighborhood input. I live 5 houses from this direction, from this planned unit. I was never contacted. Nobody on my street was ever contacted. We received no information. There was not, we never saw in the newspaper that this was going to happen. In 2010, the population of High Springs was 6,215, according to the U.S. Census. In 2020, it was 6,387, an increase of 172 people. 2016 to 2020, there were 1,829 single-family homes, with persons per household of 3.21. They want to build 2,250 homes, times 3.21 is 7,223 people that you're going to add.
Well, how many homes?
I had 2,250. I'm not sure exactly.
We're at 2,000, I think, right now, but
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
You're still 6,000 people. You're going to double the population of High Springs in 10 years. When you think of it, when you think of your planned, this thing, it'll give you some perspective. I don't know what your name is. Mr. Walsh? Yes. I'm sorry. Mr. Alderman?
Yes.
Um,
Or Donald.
a couple of, maybe 10 years, 15 years ago, the city of High Springs had a planning man come from the university. He was going to design everything. They set up at the Civic Center, they set up 8, 9 tables with a map just like that on each table and markers. And citizens sat at 8 tables and developers and lawyers sat at the 9th table. Which plan did you think the city picked? The developers. The citizens wanted a tight, dense neighborhood, tight, dense city with progressively larger parcels, much like they do in Europe. Small village, and then farmland out. 1 house per acre, then 1 house per 3 acres, then 1 house per 5, etc. This that they're doing has nothing to do with the plans that they asked for. And you said nobody comes, and that's why. Nobody wants to come because planning board, the city commission, never listens. Thank you very much.
Next, please.
Hi, my name's David Boyette. You have a letter before you that was
Yep.
distributed out to all of you. That is my letter to you, to the board, to be made as public record and to be part of this hearing that we're having here.
Christy, you going to put that on the record for us?
Additionally, I'd like for y'all to read the attachments that are from the renowned world professional about the carcinogen effects of where y'all want to put the school.
Right.
So, with that, I need to talk to you about something totally different. You have my information about the schools and my proposed plan to move the schools for the safety of the kids, the community, and of course our educators, who we greatly appreciate. So, along with that, when y'all talk about people coming to the meetings, here's my thing. I am an owner in this current PD. I am the only owner in this current PD. I owned it before the developer who's brought forward this plan. I purchased land in this PD in 2013. I bought land, lots, and the roadway to 174th Avenue, 900 feet of it, based on the 2005 plan that the city said was in effect. Now, nobody's ever contacted me until right before the last meeting. I got the letter for the residents who are with 300 feet of the proposed plan. And of course, I came and we've talked since then. I appreciate Chris taking the time. I'm the citizen that went and talked to Chris. And I appreciate him taking the time to talk with me. I appreciate everything that Ms. Atkins has done for me. And I'm gonna call you Miss Ashley because I don't want to
that's
butcher your
fine.
last name.
Yeah.
I thank your staff for everything. I really do appreciate it. But the thing that we have here is there's a lot going on that has been corrected since then, just like when we talked about the last meeting, August 30th. A lot of the facts y'all were giving about the PD, about Tamiami, how many lots were available and all, were not correct facts. The actual correct facts is there's 1,190 plats that are part of the Tamiami that are left. In 2005, the city removed the roads. My understanding and my legal advice that I was given is that that was vacating the Tamiami parts of this development. That's why the city took away the roadway rights and have no responsibilities in reference to that. The 800 lots or homes that were projected for the current PD that is in effect until 2025, that's what we need to talk about. Because I think Tamiami has been done. I think we can work with this, but I really believe that this is not the time to start making decisions. We need to sit down and really plan before we come before you and ask you to vote on something, as a community, as a developer, as a staff. So I thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You said you bought a lot near where? Whereabouts on that property?
I
though?
bought 8.12 acres, give or take,
So he's right next to this.
which was part of the planned development.
So you're literally right next to that school.
I think he's further over.
Yes, I'm right next to that school, yes, sir. And if you look at the attachment that I put with that email, it shows you my residence and what my proposals were to move the schools
Okay.
and why.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you very much. I think when they said that you were under the impression or was told that it was vacated because they took the roads out and stuff, from what I understand, it had never been filed as vacated. It verbally was done. I'm in that same problem right now. I had a preserve behind my house. One reason why I bought it. I bought the house. There's nobody going to build behind me. Come to find out later, the city never bought the property, and now it can be developed into homes.
Sir, I totally understand that.
So-
And just like Mr. Walker explained, there's a lot of gray area here
Oh,
that
yeah.
needs to be sorted out before we approve anything moving forward. And that's all we're asking.
All right, thank you
as a
very much.
community. Thank you.
Next.
Annalise Brits, 14778 Northwest 232nd Street in High Springs. It's in the Springstead development. So a lot of the questions or things that I had to say about the zoning is all in that grey area. And I don't really understand. The main thing that I don't understand is how one plat from 1925 that is on a specific part of one of the properties that was brought together to make the whole bigger development, how that one plat can dictate the zoning that was previously or is still, according to the Alachua property appraiser, zoned as residential 1 areas, which is low housing, because obviously 1,440 homes is not low density housing. So I cannot understand how you can have a zoning for residential 1 and then have a plat for 1,440 homes over that current thing. You can answer at the end, please. Then what I also want to know is the impact fees. There's been a lot of talk about, oh, the impact fees are going to pay for this, the impact fees are going to pay for that. what exactly is the amount? What is the impact fee per unit for that development? And how is that impact fee divided into the different areas that needs to be paid for? How much of each impact fee goes for roads? How much goes for water? I want to know what that is, because I think if you start to make the math or do the math to figure all this out, you're going to see the city is going to be on the losing end for a lot of tax years. Then the other thing I want to know is how you can decide in good conscience to do this development, and that this development is the right thing for the community, environmentally as well as urbanly, if there has been no comprehensive environmental and urban study done. You are putting the cart before the horse. You cannot make an informed decision about the impact 2,000 homes are going to have on this town if you do not have a comprehensive environmental study done, and if you don't have a comprehensive urban study done. That includes traffic patterns, roads, everything like that. You just can't. Yes, the developer needs to pay for that. Mr. Potts was very brave last time in saying that some things are just the cost of business when it was asked about the pump that needs to be put in for the septic services. This is also just part of doing business, is paying for that upfront so that you have the information available.
Thank you. You want to field those questions? You want to hear them again?
I can field those.
Okay.
So the first question was regarding zoning and platting. The plat was already there. Okay, typically the ordinances, when you vacate a plat, it normally has vacation of the subdivision or vacating the plat. Okay, in this ordinance, it was vacating the roads. So that's part of that gray area that we're still working out. And I don't know, honestly, if it can even be completely worked out without something happening not part of this process, quite honestly. So that's no different than, as I mentioned before, we have plats in parts of town that we do as time goes by, land use and zoning change, and that's overlaid on plats that were already there. And so they do go by the new zoning, but if the plat's already there, they don't lose the lots. They have to come into compliance with the setbacks, minimum home size, all of those sort of things. If they can't meet all those regs, then they go through our non-conforming section of our code and they come and get variances. That's kind of the process and how it works. But you can't necessarily take away what's already been there when they buy the property. The impact fees, I do not have the roadway. Oh, thank you. Very good job. So for each single family home, where did this come from? Okay. All right. So I just want to make sure, because I thought the transportation was higher for that one. But so for each home, it'd be $4,989. So transportation would be $1,687 per home. But that is supplemented by, so when the developer does a traffic impact fee study, that's not saying these impact fees are going to pay for everything. It's not. The developer will be required, based on the traffic impact study, to pay for off-site improvements. The city may partner on some of those. Typically, when we partner, it's because we want something additional. So if the traffic impact fee study says, hey, you need to expand the lane from 2 lane to 4 lanes, they're required to do that. Now, if we want them to, I don't know, say put sidewalks or something that's not in our ordinance, or if, say, it's a water line and we want them to, they're only required to make a 6-inch and we want them to make an 8-inch, then we typically would use the impact fees to pay for the difference between the 6 and 8-inch. So it's normally a combination of the developer paying for offsite improvements that are required after they do the impact fee study, plus us partnering on things that we find would be beneficial to the community as well, and then we grab those impact fees. So, and as for the water and sewer, we're undergoing a study right now And we have had some preliminary costs come back for those. For instance, water currently is $250, and the recommended impact fee is there's two recommendations running from $3,000 to $7,000, but they have not been adopted yet. The third question.
I can answer that one.
Okay.
How can we, in good judgment, let this go through? We're kind of hamstrung by the laws. We have to, if the planning board is basically here as a stopgap for something to get to the commission, that if there's a legal problem that's not seen, or some sort of item that doesn't agree with our codes and our ordinances, and as well as state and maybe even in some cases federal law, we're here to catch this before it goes to the commission, so they have to deal with it. So if it meets all the requirements by law, we're almost have to approve it. Now, we can make improvements on it, make extra demands. I think one of you were here at the last meeting we had about a building going up over here across from the Kangaroo at the, what was that development? The Cadillac Hotel. And he wanted to put up a tall fence and a development. Well, we talked and worked it out and made some recommendations, and we got something really nice going in there, I think, now. But that's about the best we can do. Now, of course, if we approve this, it goes to commission. They actually are the ones that can make decisions on the whole thing. We don't have as much choice. You've elected them to make the choices for you. We're volunteers and asked to be here to just take some pressure off of them, and that's what we do. Yeah, we'll go out of our way. We do a lot more research than, I was with a planning board down south. Those guys never even left their homes. But, I mean, every one of these guys go out, and we check things out. I mean, I've gone and talked to people and you know, and the public about it and said, hey, tell me something. So that's how we can, in good judgment, pass something or not pass it, but we're hamstrung by what there's out there now. We can't just say, hey, we don't want it, we don't like it, and shut it down. We can't do that. We have to give a good reason, and to believe that it's just going to be a bad impact on a city is not a reason for us to be allowed to do that. I'm sorry, but that's just the way the laws are. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I wanted to clarify one thing that the citizen said. They said it was R1 zoned. It is not R1 zoned. It is PD zoning, so planned development. That is its actual zoning.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Sylvia Martini Newcomb at 16075 Northwest 222nd Street. That's Scenic Highway in High Springs. Yes, it is a scenic highway. There's a lot of people that pay a lot of taxes off of that one road. Large homes, large parcels. The thing that I see about this development and the number of houses and different things that the developer is wanting to do, and I understand Miss Ashley wanting to take some of the heat off of the city parks and stuff like that. I do understand that, I do. But it seems to me that if the developer would reduce some of the amenities that he is proposing for this little town, sounds great, the water park and all this other stuff, but if he reduced some of those amenities, then he could enlarge the size of the lots and the number of the houses, decreasing the number of houses that are going in that parcel. That makes sense to me. Of course, I'm just an old country gal whose family's been here since 1919. What do I know? So I think that one of the things that we have to consider also is the infrastructure of High Springs. In 1925, I kind of doubt that the Tillmans or whoever came up with that plat. I don't think they could ever have imagined that someone would have to wait 3 turns to turn left at a red light. We used to have 2 red lights down here, believe it or not, right by City Hall. They took it out. I hope they put it on 441 across from the other development that's going in, because that is horrendous. We'll talk about Railroad Avenue some other time, about the giveaways and how you have to drive on the wrong side of the road to get here. But I think that, yes, you can't you're over a barrel. You really are. You're over a barrel. I understand that. But I also understand haggling with builders. I think y'all need to haggle just a little bit more. Thank you. Oh,
Go
one
ahead.
other thing. What about that Indian burial ground that's on that property that he's wanting to build over?
Thank you. That's a good question. Is there one?
So that is something that when we get to plating, we'll research further. I mean, that's again, there's several things. I know people don't like this answer, but there's several things that you just don't start getting into the weeds until plating, which is the standard process.
Now, as far as the parks go, I think you negotiated in those parks. And what's the total acreage of the parks? Do we know?
I have it written down somewhere.
63.71
Yeah, yeah.
So that's not really. That's like a tenth of an.
It's like
not- a 8/10 of an acre per property, right?
Yeah, it's like
Or,
8%
eighth of an acre.
the property.
Yeah. So that wouldn't even increase. that much.
The amount of the parks, because you have to have the roads, you
Right.
have to have, the buffer was already in the original Tillman.
Retention.
And I think the buffer is desirable from what I've heard. So you really need a school site. So the amount of acreage wouldn't increase the lots to the point where you would think it's not the density that, I think the density you're aiming for, that acreage wouldn't increase the lots that much. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening. Sue Weller, 21775 Northwest 154th Place. And I live right around the corner from 222nd, about 4 homes past that. I'm here tonight. I certainly would not want to see and do not want to see 2,000 homes built on this property. But I also understand that where you're at, because of the zoning and the other issues, that you're going to be having to make a decision on this and whether you're going to approve it and send it to the commission. But I do believe that there are some recommendations that you can make to the commission in whatever you do tonight. First thing I would suggest or would ask that you recommend to the commission that there are 1 acre parcels on the surrounding area or the outside area of the actual property. That was what was in the original PD in 2005, that there were going to be
You're
1
talking the
acre.
border homes.
The border, yes, sir. The other is, and I know it was mentioned tonight, that there is going to be a 25-foot buffer around the border, again, of the property. What I saw on the picture, I don't believe it showed it, that there are some buffers, but I did not see where it showed a buffer going around the perimeter of the property. And I would request that, again, on the record to the commission, that you make that recommendation to make sure that there is a buffer all the way around. When it comes to 222nd, I would request that the exit, again, that this is on the record, that exit onto 222nd not be open until it is built up to that point. I would also request that, obviously, that road's going to have to be improved and widened, and that when that happens, not only is the developer responsible for all of that, and that is included in the developer's agreement, but there is landscaping of trees down both sides of that road to keep that as it has been designated as a scenic road in High Springs. And I would also request that the developer agreement, once it comes before or is concluded or created, that it is available for this public to see so that we can make sure that any recommendations and any of the things that have been talked about tonight that supposedly is going to be there is in that developer's agreement. Thank you.
You want what we've talked about to be a part of the record as far as what's in that agreement then? Is that what you're saying on the last one?
Yes, I want to make sure that if these recommendations
Are
are
made?
made,
Okay.
that they are in the developer's agreement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now the buffer, even though it didn't show up on the map, Chris, that it's there. It's just on some places it's bigger. Is that what that shows on the map?
No, it's there on the map entirely.
Okay, but
all the way around.
But I thought I saw a couple places where it was extra thick, like a little park or two on the south side. And some retention ponds. Okay.
And it's in the developer
But it
agreement.
is, yes, it is a requirement that's in the developer's agreement that
Now,
25 foot buffer.
if, let's say they do hold off and they finally dump on the 222, the developer be responsible for improvement all the way up to 174th, not just that portion, correct?
So I don't want to say right now without platting what
Right.
he would be responsible for, but
That could be
yes, I would think
negotiated.
so. Okay, but I hate to say it without the traffic impact fee study
Okay.
doing, but typically it would be yes.
Okay,
The other
thank you.
component to it is right-of-way width.
Yeah.
And so a private landowner cannot obtain right-of-way from other private owners. So that will be a factor into roadway improvements.
Okay.
So keep that in mind. And additionally, the 2005 PD had no minimum lot size. So although the pictorial showed larger lots around the perimeter, they could be any size based on the previous PD that was approved in 2005.
That was just a rough draft is what we're doing on that? Is that what you're saying? Okay. Yeah, because I tried looking up 222 on some old surveyor maps. Trust me, I spent hours trying to find the easement of 222, and it looks like it does this.
Yeah, it follows the road.
So I don't know, as far as 222, the actual, if let's say the county came in or whatever and wanted to widen the road, how much of those trees they would take out in the first place. I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, is most of those trees, by at least the aerial view, are in an area that would be removed completely if the county came in and changed it. So I don't know. We would have to look at that and have an impact done on that. I mean, get the tree
Additionally, a
department
lot of those
involved.
trees are on private property.
On the west side?
On either side.
Okay.
On private property. And so although the canopies extend into the roadway, they're on private property. So if the roadway is widened and the private property is taken, then the trees would be removed. But if the roadway is within the existing right-of-way, those trees are on private property, which is up to the landowners for removal.
Well, I mean, isn't there a natural built-in easement on this? I mean, I know when they put my road in, they cut 5 of my trees right off front of my property because it would affect when they made the road. So how would my house be any different than their house? Is it, that's
So
just
they
the way
can
it
trim
is?
the trees, but if the
No, they
tree-
took the trees flat out.
They're legally not allowed to remove the tree if it's not within an
I'll be
easement.
talking, I'm gonna bring it,
It's supposed
represent
to be
me.
in the right of way.
Yes.
Okay.
We can't, like on private property, we can't do it, but
Right.
sometimes we do. Because if it presents a danger to life, health, safety, then we'll request permission from the property owner and do it. But-
Okay. Right. That's what I was saying, that when I looked from the aerial, it looks like at some point, all those, several hundred yards of it is actually in the middle where the road's supposed to be. So I don't know, okay. Oh, no, I don't. Thank you. Any questions?
The gray area we've been talking about, going back and forth. At what point will we ever be involved in any of this decision-making when it comes to those gray points?
Well, I think the argument is that we have vested rights for this many homes based upon the old plat from 1925 and the existing PD that was 2005. That's the argument that's being proposed. And I think that my advice earlier is that leads us down a rabbit trail because I'm not sure that you have developable rights on that 1925 plat. The point that I was making is base your decision on the development that's before you that you've heard meets the requisites of the future land use plan and the existing zoning 1 to 4, and it's within those constraints of your code. And that's where the focal point is, in my view.
Thank you.
Next.
Good evening. My name is Donna Coughlin.
Could you pull your mic down a little closer to you? Thank you.
Donna Coughlin, 22013 Northwest. I moved here to High Springs in 1990 and purchased 30 acres on 154th Place. my late husband and I transformed the scrub into a farm. And currently, I still live on the 15 acres that is closest of 154th Place and 222nd Street. And then my neighbors have the other 15 acres where they have beautiful pasture for their horses. I agree with lots of the other residents who have been in opposition to the proposed development regarding the negative aspects of to roads, traffic, water, schools, emergency management, and the quality of the rural life that we enjoy now and many of my neighbors have talked about. Mr. Alderman mentioned earlier that there wasn't, I guess, previous response until it was in my backyard, and it is now in my front yard. Could we look at a map of the proposed development, the one that this gentleman had? Because I wanted to ask a question, and it's...
Can you pause that time real quick while you put the map?
It was the master plan. Yeah, I guess that's a good one. So in the bottom right corner, in my front yard, if this development happens, I will have 3 things. 8 to 10 new neighbors on lots. 15. I'm concerned with all of that. Previous development being talked about and all that, I thought, well, what's that basin going to do to my front yard? I don't know. It's going to be it'll be at the property line. I don't know how much that 25-foot buffer will impact. And then the collector road, if it's put in where it's, if I'm looking at the map correctly, it's real close to the corner, which is a bad spot. I check my mail and I see traffic coming both ways, and I stand there and cross my fingers and hope everybody's going to see everybody else. It's a bad location for the connector road, if there has to be a connector road there at all.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I know that corner you're talking about. I mean, I apprehensively approach it all the time because invariably somebody's hot rodding down that road around that corner, and it's nuts. It really is.
And could somebody address the basin, please? You know, where that water goes?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll
Does it
have
go
Chris address
south?
it since he's the engineer.
So similar to other stormwater basins in this area, it's a dry retention basin. So the water will be infiltrated into the ground by the natural soils.
So it's just your standard retention pond with it. How deep is these retention ponds? Is there like a depth to them?
We have not gotten to that
To that
stage
point yet?
for
Okay.
engineering design.
There's no pop-off on this retention pond then?
No, that's correct.
All right, thank you. Next.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Terry Phelan, and I'm going to just read a letter. I will be speaking on behalf of our Santa Fe River, Inc., an organization comprised of approximately 100 members working to protect, preserve, and restore the waters and land supporting the aquifer, springs, and river within the watershed of the Santa Fe River. The Santa Fe River and its springs are dying. The decline of the Santa Fe River spring flow pushing up from the Floridan aquifer is a direct cause of urban and agricultural withdrawals that exceed what is being recharged back into the aquifer from rainwater. Without this push from the aquifer, all of the spring flows have declined, some of our springs have stopped flowing, and flow helps remove nutrient contaminants such as nitrates from chemical fertilizers from our river and springs. One result from this nutrient overload is causing most all of the native subaquatic vegetation to die off. As a result, aquatic wildlife such as manatees are dying of starvation from loss of their food stores. And Kristen provided you with some maps. The maps show that the entire city of High Springs is on a highly vulnerable, unconfined recharge area over the Floridan Aquifer Protection Zone and is designated as such on the city's future land use maps. The Bridlewood PD proposes a 10 to 20 year build out of 2,000 residential units, 300,000 additional square feet of non-residential buildings, driveways, roads, and concrete slabs that will be built on the highly vulnerable recharge area. This equates to approximately 6,000 to 8,000 additional residents. This population density will more than double the size of High Springs' current population and will be withdrawing water from the wells of this highly vulnerable recharge area. On the low side, each of the 6,000 residents will use approximately 80 gallons of water per day, which will equate to, over the period of a year, 175,200,000 gallons of water. And this doesn't include water being used by the 300,000 additional feet of additional buildings. So, in our opinion, the PD build out for this size community should be half of what it is planned. The Bridlewood PD has some good design elements in place. However, it does not have the extra needed plans in place that will preserve and restore the Santa Fe River. And so we came up with some ideas that we feel would help with the recharge system. Those would be true permeable pavement, solar power, and I don't think you realize how much solar power or how much water is used for coal-fired plants. Roof-lined gutters, rain barrels.
Hold on. Let me get those down real quick. Permeable pavement.
Solar power.
Okay.
Roof-lined gutters, rain barrels, prohibiting sod and non-native landscapes. And this is a big one. Eliminating shovel-ready clear cutting. Leaving remaining canopies, and providing for natural seed banks and wildlife species habitat. So I just want to leave you with this note. The High Springs Comp Plan states, High Springs values its roots and is planning for and embracing the future. High Springs will adopt a philosophy allowing for sustainable development that enhances economic opportunity and community well-being while protecting and restoring the natural environment. High Springs will encourage well-planned growth without sacrificing High Springs' natural beauty and rural hometown character.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don, I'd like to ask something
Go ahead.
of her. I don't remember her name. Christy, is it possible that all the board members could get a copy of that, since she didn't provide that to us?
I'll make a copy before she leaves.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I can't remember all that.
I would like, I think those are wonderful suggestions. Some of the things like clear cutting are already in the development agreement. Some of the things like solar panels are not. We are limited to some degree by what's in code, and the developer has given us substantial, a lot more that's in code. So just please keep in mind that yes, I don't know how far we can keep pushing, not saying you can't ask, but we do have to refer to code somewhat.
We're not restricted by if an individual wants to put on solar panels, they can
Right,
do
no,
that.
they
Right.
can, but
You can't require that.
These are great ideas, and we can continue discussions, and we can also continue discussions if it's approved at other levels as well.
Now, as far as guttering and all that kind of stuff, is that still up to the owner, Chris?
That's typically
Okay.
the builder.
The builder, whether he puts it in there or not?
Mhm.
Okay.
Most of these newer homes do have guttering.
Oh, I didn't have mine for the past 3 months. What a nightmare.
Most of the custom homes will be, but DR Horton Express doesn't. I live in one. But they're not, again, they're not looking at the national builders right now, so.
No, but I would like, I'm just curious, I don't know where to look for that information, and I apologize for not remembering the lady that spoke earlier. If it's possible, I would like for her to send to Christie some information on this Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
It's the first I've heard of it. I have no idea even where to start looking, so maybe she could save me a little time and energy.
Was that you, ma'am? We had a problem last night. I wish we could, but we had a problem. It- Are you bribing us? I'll let you make the comment if you let me know about the Indian burial thing.
Sonny Tillman's ranch guy used to come over to my house and cut hay, and he would show me the arrowheads that he found on the property and said there's a big mound, and he's got a huge collection, and it's there. And the other comment was about the parks and recreation that was going to be provided,
Yep.
and then other city residents would be able to come onto the property.
Yes,
Okay.
it's not restricted.
Okay, where were those people that don't live there coming onto the property, going to go into the play park and the soccer field and tennis? Where are they going to park?
There's going to be parking set up for that, Chris, I believe, in all the areas? Yeah. It's on the concept plan, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
I will let you know about the Indian burial ground. If at any time during construction of this, they find something like that, they will halt and stop construction at that point.
I think that's federal law now.
Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
way around that. Well,
That's like a further phase. See, there's always phase. That's why they don't come in and get approval and they start building houses tomorrow. We're months and months away from this being anywhere for the first time they put a shovel to the place. Next, anyone? Hey, that was mine.
Good evening, my name is Randall Kegler, 17384 Northwest 240th Terrace. Gentlemen, at the beginning of this meeting, I was insulted by Mr. Potts when he said neither did any of us that were not professional or experts have a right to make a decision. All 5 of you gentlemen are not paid, am I correct?
That's correct.
You're not professional. The definition of professional is paid. The definition of expert is someone who's paid. So this gentleman wants to insult me. I didn't bring my resume. It's quite extensive. 31 years of education in horticulture, forestry, agri-science. I'm the first guy to put the first seed in termination with NASA. And when I heard this gentleman make the statement, I didn't know if you guys caught that. He does not consider you professionals because you're not paid. I'm concerned about the environment. And yes, there's an Indian mound out there. And a friend of mine who does not want to be one who took from it does know it's there. He's lived here his entire life. I don't want to hear there has been no traffic study. One of my buddies is an engineer, retired with the DOT. If you haven't done a traffic study, you haven't done due diligence. If you don't realize what the cost of a road is, it's $1.5 million per mile. Check with the DOT. If you want to find out how much water is used, Google it. It's 130 gallons per day per person, higher than the 80. As for the water permit, who cares? It's the amount of water being consumed that scares me. And the issue of environmental science, which I taught for 31 years, and there's also an endowment at the University of Florida in my name for my teaching. When I was insulted by this gentleman behind me, the term carpetbagger was something we used to use in the South years ago. When someone moves into somewhere to take profit, and the only people that are going to earn profit are the developer, the real estate agent, and the city if they get decent impact fees, which won't go very far. So my concern is that you five gentlemen, I'm glad you're all here, and whomever was in the hospital, I hope you're better. You're well, because I suffer, and I know what it's like to be there. But my concern is the community, and I believe the community should have a right to vote in a referendum as to whether or not we want this development. We approved another development a few hours ago. 40 homes on 1 acre lots, 5 acre lots. So please, once again, I'm going to beg you to table this and continue to investigate and let us come back again. There's a hurricane looming. Cat 1 to Cat 4, it's like 1 house to 4 houses. I sure as hell hope we don't get a Cat 4.
I agree with you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next. Okay, I guess that's closed public discussion. Any board discussion? We're gonna stop here and take a quick restroom break. So, I mean, we've been sitting up here a while. I've been sucking on tea and water. So, if we'll convene back here at 9:25. Is 5 minutes enough? All right, 9:25. are we at? Discussion among the board? Yes, what?
I had one question for you in reference to the connections.
You mean the road connections?
The connections to Tillman Acres and to Springstead.
No. Well,
I just had one question.
I got to stick to it this time. Thank you very much. Yeah, we got. You're going to get to ask this again. All right, go ahead. All right, what were you going? Someone's going to say? Yeah, he's still here.
Chris, I just want to say I've watched every one of these you've done. You've done a lot of them on this, and it is a good community. Growth is inedible. I mean, we're going to have growth. You know, I like this better than what was proposed there. I think you've done a lot to help the city with this, with the parks and the land. Anybody else?
You know, I've been a High Springs citizen here for a while now. And I moved from a big city. And I moved here because it was a small, cute town. People were polite that you didn't have in the big city. But like my counterpart just said, we cannot avoid the growth. And for the city's sake, I really do feel that they're doing everything possible to at least give us the things that we need to help the community out. Anybody else?
Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if this does pass, there's gonna be many more stages where this has to come through planning and people will be able to put input in. We can ask, give or take. I mean, they've given a lot, but we can still ask for more and we'll address other issues at them points.
Exactly. Many of the things that were brought up, especially the roadway issues,
Yes.
that's all addressed at plating. And again, I mean, I don't want to be left with the phone calls when there's cars stacking and not moving. I don't want to deal with that. So it's in the best interest of everyone, you know, to make sure all of this works.
And they do have, it will come back before the board, so people can put their input in if they come to the meetings,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, and we want to plan things in the best manner, and there will be capacity on all levels prior to staff recommending approval on any plat.
And just, I want to hit on one thing that you said earlier, Don. Thank you guys for coming out, but, you know, last meeting, we talked about impact fees, we had no one here. So, you know, we want people to come to all these meetings.
Actually, stand corrected. There was one of them.
One person, yeah. But we want you guys to come to these meetings to give your input, not just because it backs up to your house or your property, for everything in the city.
If this gets approved tonight, it goes before the commission. What meeting would that go to, probably?
It will go, there'll be first reading at the, is it the 13th, Christy? I think it's the 13th.
Yes, the next commission meeting would be October 13th.
And then the one after that is the 27th would be second reading.
And then what would happen after that?
Then after that, if the commission approves first and second reading, then it would be approved. And then the next stage would be preliminary plating.
And that would come before us again?
Yes. To plan board and then city commission.
Right, and then we would get the plating, and then is there anything, and it goes before the commission again?
Yeah, there'd be preliminary and final plating.
And then does anything come, it comes before us again on other things too, still in this development, but the plating is the pretty well laying out of everything.
Yeah, and then, so the homes would not come before you. But the commercial site plans, like, you know, like the multifamily would be in the assistant living and the police fire station, the school, all that would come before you for site plan approval. And the concept plan, again, it's outlays like the major concept. At plating, you could, some of the roadways could kind of move a little based on traffic impact analysis. You know, the school site could be widened. It could move a little based on those electric power lines. I mean, a lot of these issues that have been brought up tonight, they're not going on deaf ears. I mean, they will be taken in consideration as you move forward, as we move forward, if this development is approved.
And the only thing I have to say is, once again, I thank you all for showing up tonight. I thank you for your comments. As I indicated earlier, my goodness, almost 20 pages of comments and remarks from the last meeting. I read over them 3 times. I got a lot of my questions answered. But one thing I would encourage y'all to do, anytime that you have a communication that you'd like for the board to address, if you could get it to, before our meeting, to Ms. Ashley in a timely manner so that we have time to review it, whatever it may be. It may be something where we need to travel and go look at a site. And that's pretty much it. And Chris, the lady, what's her name? Susan, there's a couple comments I would like to make, but I won't make. But once again, I'm referring, that correspondence looks like it was dated September 26th. I would have liked to have had that a little bit earlier than just receiving it today from Ashley. Just a little more time to review it and study it. That's all I have to comment on.
Okay, I promise you, we take this seriously, we really do. I mean, the amount of man-hours we've put into this, I mean, we could just rubber stamp this, go, we're just volunteers, we make nothing on this, we're not getting anything out of this other than what we're trying to do good for the city. If this gets approved tonight, it's nothing on you. I mean, personally, I don't want this many homes in High Springs. I really don't. I know what it's like going downtown. You guys know, you drive it. You know, I skip downtown. So, but as it was said, is we have to kind of do something with it, and hopefully the infrastructure can be built along with it, and maybe put pressure on the county to make developments on, or improvements on their roads as it builds out. And at this point, I personally think we should pass this and let the commission handle it, and let these people talk to the commission and see what they want to do.
I should add, my opinion last time was that I was the dissenting vote. And my reasoning is, well, I'm not going to go over them again because we've talked about them, you've talked about them. I think it's too big of a project. It's a bittersweet decision because the city's done a phenomenal job. The job that the developer is doing, it looks like a great plan. It looks like a great place. It looks like a planned city. But I just don't like where it's at. I think it's too darn close to the city. I don't think the infrastructure's there. I'll be a dissenting vote again.
Also, something that Mr. Altman brought up earlier, it meets all the criterias, and it's legal. I mean,
Right.
it's the law. It's following the laws. So, and we have to do that too. We have to follow the laws. So on that, I'll make a motion to pass PB LPA Z 22-03.
I second.
Christie?
Donald Alderman,
Yes.
Brad Riddle,
Yes.
John Walsh,
No.
Tim Bolliger,
Yes.
and Hector Tapanis.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
All right, that concludes that item. I need a motion for the meeting to close.
I make a motion that we close this meeting this evening.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. It is now